So last week we were painting a white dog, and immediately following that, everybody was asking, well, yeah, that's great, but how do I paint a black dog? So I don't have a black dog, and I don't know any friends with a black dog, but I went to Pixabay and I found a really great reference, and I want to talk about that for a moment. So let's switch on over here to my reference. All right, so here's this beautiful photograph. I'm sorry, I should have got the photographer's name, but running late, I didn't grab it in time. But this I got from pixabay.com. Wonderful photograph. The background's very simple, so that's a great way to start. Sometimes I found a lot of photographs with really dark backgrounds, and when you're trying to photograph a dark dog, black or very dark reddish brown or something like that, then that can be a real problem because you don't even see where the dog ends. Plus, it just makes for a very dark, ominous type of painting. So as it can look wonderful as a photograph, but as a reference for painting, not so much. So let me tell you first of all what you should be looking for, or what not what you should be looking for, but what I advise you look for in a reference image, and how to take it. First of all, if you have a black dog and you want to paint it, or if somebody wants to give you a commission to paint a dog, and I know that there's a number of animal painters out there, so this will certainly include you. When you are looking to take a picture of a dog, number one, don't look down on the dog from a human standing position. Get down to the dog's eye level to take the picture. Now, sometimes that invites the dog to come running up to you because it thinks you want to play, but you may have to enlist the help of a friend to keep the dog on a leash, or to get the dog to sit and stay, something like that. But you want the dog at a distance, and I highly advise that you zoom in with your camera rather than getting too close to the dog, because when you get close to the dog, the nose will look huge and then the body will look really tiny in behind. So it really exaggerates the perspective of the dog. So stand back and zoom in, and everything will look in better proportion for you. Now, the next thing that I would suggest is, of course, the lighting, which can be really challenging on a black dog, because a black dog will, your camera will black out all of the shadows, and it'll be very hard to see. So what you're really looking for is highlight. So really look for a bunch of highlight in your dog. And one of the easiest ways to do that is put your dog near a window if you're indoors or outdoors. And while normally I would suggest bright sunshine for animals, a black dog might actually look better on a cloudy day, because on a cloudy day you will get a little bit more of the shadows showing up as well. When you have bright sunshine and it emphasizes the highlights, sometimes what happens is your shadows become so black that you really can't see any of the detail in there at all. So an overcast day is ideal for taking photos of black dogs, or any other black animal or dark animal, cat, whatever. All right, let me just get my other window up here. There we go. So, good morning. I've got people from all over again, and I got to scroll back here because I just noticed something. Angela, it's your birthday. Happy birthday. And I am sorry about your accident. So that's very unfortunate, but enjoy your day. I hope you get spoiled rotten. Let me see here. we've got, oh dear, that's terrible. Okay, so let me just scroll through here, make sure there's no more questions before I start. All right, so thank you so much for joining me, and we're going to get rolling here. So first things first, where to begin? When I did the white dog, we started by wetting the paper and leaving the white of the paper as the highlight. Well, we can't really do that here because there's no white highlights like there is on a white dog, but there are highlights. So I'm always looking for things like where the highlights are, and it's the value of that I'm looking for, the value, the lightness or darkness. The other thing I'm looking for is whether or not those highlights are warm or cool or neutral. Sometimes on a sunny day, if you've got a blue sky, you're going to notice, wow, those highlights are really blue. You may have a black. Sometimes black has a very warm undertone, almost a reddish black. And you will see a lot of that kind of highlight in some of these areas down here in the body. And then maybe even blue up on the head. So you might see warm and cool in your highlights. So let's get into this. I'm going to start once again by wetting my paper. And I'm going to be looking at my my highlights. Now I need to first of all get my paint ready if I'm going to be wetting my paper. So over here on my palette, was scrambling a little bit today, so I don't really have a lot of my paints wet, and I don't have even my palette cleaned, but I can use some of the paint I've got here on my palette anyway. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of water to that. I'm going to wet some of my other colors as well. And you can see I add a generous amount of water to all of my colors because that amount of water is going to soften up all these paints and make them a lot easier to get those rich colors. And boy, on black fur, you're really going to need it. Okay, so I've got everything wet, including my my little wet puddle here, my older paint there. But I will need to mix a pretty big puddle. I'm going to use a fairly large brush for this. So let's stir this in, and you can see this is all going to go kind of gray. And I'm going to use some. I'll use some Payne's Gray for this. All right, so I have some color here, and you'll notice I didn't make it really deep, rich color. I mean, it's fairly dark, but it's not the darkest I could possibly make it. I'm going to now take another big brush, something that holds lots of water, and I'm going to wet my paper. And I'm not worrying about staying in the lines. And I know my drawing's very, very light at the moment, but it will be easier to see as I get a little bit more color on here. I'm not going to worry about I mean, normally I would do my background first because it is the lighter of the two, but I'm going to just jump right into the actual lesson, which is the fur today. All right, so I've put a generous amount of water on there. You can see it's like quite shiny. And actually, if I tip it, the water's kind of running sort of thing. Everything wet, I'm still brushing around very, very lightly. And I'm doing that so that as the paper starts to absorb all of that moisture and it begins to wrinkle and all of that, that we don't get pooling in just concentrated areas. So I need to make sure I'm spreading it around frequently. There we go. Okay, I was getting an error there for some reason. Oh, it comes up and then it goes away. All right, so one question. We don't have a place nearby to print pictures off. Any recommendations for a color printer? Well, I've actually had my printer a couple of years now, so I don't even think that they make my printer anymore. But I have a Brother printer, and I rather like it. It's the type that holds like the mega tank thing, where you don't have to keep buying refills, because I was spending a fortune on refills before. But yeah, I the one that I have, it's quite a large machine actually. It like you're going to need a place in your house for it because it's really quite big, and it will print a larger size. Like this is what they call tabloid or ledger size. This is 11 by 17 inch, so that's a pretty big printout, and which I wanted because of the way that I use it so often. But you can do just as well if you were to print, for example, an 8 by 10, or sorry, an 8.5 by 11, like a regular size printer. You don't have to buy the big one. If you're not doing this all the time, then what you could do is you can print your image on a normal piece of paper and then fold it in half and enlarge each side, and then tape them to get, like, print that again and tape those together, and then you'll have a bigger image. So if it's not something you're doing all the time, oh yeah, you know what? Sorry, I got distracted there by reading. 2 pieces you can tape together, and that might be a good solution if you're not using that all the time. I am not coming across well. It keeps going on and off. That is, I don't know why. It says that my connection is excellent, so it could be on your side. I'm not sure. Oh, well, let me pull my mic over a little bit more. Maybe that'll help. The volume's up all the way on both my microphone and my my settings here. But I do see an error. Okay, some of you are having problems, some of you are not. So I'm not really sure what that is. We had the same sort of thing last week, so let's hope that's not an ongoing issue. All right, so take a look. My paper has started wrinkling, right? That's started wrinkling, but there's no puddles. And if I'm tipping it, the water's no longer running. So this is a good time for me to start adding in my color. If my paper is wet and I want to have some control, that means my brush needs to be dry. So when you are looking for control, if your paper's wet, your brush is dry. If your paper's dry, your brush is wet. Just remember those opposites when you are looking for control. There's exceptions, of course. You know, when you want to have everything just like a big smooth wash, great, make both of them wet. All right, so I'm going to take my brush and blot it. Oh, I got a little on my background there. I blotted it because if I go in here and I start putting in color and it's running all over the place, I want to make sure I'm not starting at an edge. So I'm starting in from like somewhere in the middle where it's not going to be a problem if it spreads. But here we go. Okay, so I'm going to basically paint this dog with this dark color. And I will go around the eye because the eye is a different color. Making sure my brush isn't too wet. There we go. So you can see I'm sort of blocking in the dog with what is ultimately going to be the lightest areas of the dog. I'm doing this on wet paper, or I should say, yeah, I guess it's wet, but it's not soaking wet. It's not, I wouldn't exactly call it damp. It's a little wetter than damp, but oh, I got a little pink in my brush there. That's okay. That's interesting. All right, so let's come in here. By the way, if you draw out a black dog, you might want to do your pencil lines a little darker because you're going to lose them. So there's a tip as well. Ah, there's that culprit. I found that little bit of red hiding on my palette here I'm picking up. It won't matter. You know, you can always do different colors than your photo. If you get your colors all wrong, you can pull off a really great painting still, as long as you have the values correct, because these values in this case are really going to determine the shape and form of the dog. Okay, it's really light around this nose area here, so I might pull off a little bit right in here. And maybe a little bit right down here. I'm going to just lift out a little of that color while it's still wet. I'm just going to lift those areas because sometimes lifting is easier than trying to think of it after the fact. But they don't need to be as light as you think. Remember, right now all we're seeing this against is white paper. And the problem with that is that it's fooling our heads. It's fooling our brain into thinking, ooh, that's pretty dark. But you're wrong. It's not dark. It's light. This is light because we have a lot more dark to come in. It looks like some of you who were signing out and signing back in seems to have resolved some of the issues. So that's kind of a bizarre thing that several of you had the same thing at the same time, but there we go. All right, so it's still wet. Okay, still wet. Now I can start thinking about coming in with some darker color. Now this time I have to work, again, not wet, but I want to bring in more color here. And I'm going to first lightly, and I do this, I say lightly because I don't want to go too fast with my darks. I might just end up with light and dark and no mid values. So I don't want to jump right into dark, dark, dark right away. But I'm going to bring this over to the main screen so you can see what I'm doing. This is a natural hair brush. And if I kind of squish it like this, you can see that the tip isn't as rounded as it once was, right? I'm spreading out the bristles and I can get this really nice sort of zigzag edge to my brush. I'm going to use that. So let's try it out somewhere where it's not too important, because, you know, at this point of the game, you might not be feeling too confident about your technique. So I would gently, and I should note that if you go right up to your edges on that first wash, they keep growing. They will keep expanding. So you might want to come short of your lines if you're going to do that. All right, so let's say, for example, I have to be careful I don't rest my big picture on my wet paper here. But let's say this little bit here, and you can see that the hair direction is sort of sweeping up in that spot. So that's what I'm going to try to replicate here. Okay, that worked pretty good. Then there's a dark line comes down here. And this is going out in this direction. So this splayed bristle, let me zoom in so you can see this. All right, so you can, okay, now it's in focus. So you can see how I've splayed the bristle and how it makes the end look kind of zigzag. That's what I'm using. And while I'm working on wet, it's not really staying in place, but it will show in the end. Like it will represent that same kind of look, but it will give a really soft appearance. Even though this is a shorter haired dog, and if you look really close, you can probably see every hair, but because it's, you know, it's really well in focus and everything. It's this transition between this light area and this darker area that you don't want to have a hard line there. So I'm still want to be working on wet, even though I'm using this, even though I've got a short-haired dog. So what I'm looking for right now is highlights that I can paint around. Question, what would I change for a commission portrait this size? Do you charge? Oh, what do I charge? Oh, do you charge more for whole body parts? Currently, I'm not taking any commissions. I just have so much on my plate, and I have a lot of workshops coming up. So I'm not taking on any commissions currently. This is having trouble focusing because I'm painting it blurry, so it doesn't know what to do. Now it knows how to focus. The camera's trying to focus in on something that is out of focus. Come on, you. There we go. But no, at the moment I am not. I'm not doing any commissions. But if you're wondering what you would charge, then I think it depends a lot on a lot of factors. So what to charge for art and commissions is always a very tricky question, because it depends on many things. It depends on the complexity of the image. I'm going to paint as I'm answering this. It depends on the complexity of the image. It also is affected by your personal experience. Are you a seasoned artist with well-known reputation? Are you are you doing a lot of these, or is this just do you do a little bit of everything? Do you have awards? Basically, what is your CV or in your bio? Can you justify a higher price? My advice is that if you are doing pet commissions, that you see what other people are charging in your area. And be honest with your own skill. Are you at that level? Are you at the same level of ability as that person? And do you have the same experience and all of that? And I know, yeah, doesn't seem fair that you're a really good painter, but you don't have, maybe you're not famous or anything, but you're really, really good painter. Well, yes, you can definitely charge more than somebody who's not as skilled. I mean, duh, right? It's an obvious thing. But the what to charge is always a little bit tricky because it depends on your region as well. You may already have a lot of people doing that kind of thing in your area. You may have nobody doing something in your area. So sometimes just pure supply and demand is a determining factor too. And what I mean by that is, don't always go by what the photos that your client gives you, because they often give you terrible pictures. And, as sad as it sounds, I've done a lot of pet portraits, actually. And one thing I have found is that many a times people don't think about getting a pet portrait done until the dog or cat or animal has passed. And then you're stuck. You only have their terrible photo to go by. So be selective. I highly recommend. Be selective about things like, what commissions you actually take. Because if you take something that is a horrible picture, it's going to be very difficult for you to produce a good photo or a good painting from that. And if you can't produce a good painting, how happy do you think your customer's going to be? Customers sometimes forget that you don't know the dog, and you can't just invent out of your head. I once had somebody give me a bunch of puppy pictures from a Rottweiler, which this puppy unfortunately, and the pictures they had were all from behind. No pictures of the face, but they wanted me to do this particular dog. And I thought they were joking, and they weren't. But so I obviously couldn't paint from that photo. I ended up just, thank goodness it was a purebred dog, because I was able to go online and find a pretty good Rottweiler puppy picture, and that's what they got, because I couldn't paint their exact dog. I had no question. I had no I had no proper reference. Now, you may have noticed that I stopped painting here, and it's because I'm starting to see a lot of harder lines. And the harder lines are coming because my paper's drying. So I can do a couple of things. I could spritz, but spritzing's dangerous, because if I spritz, this paint's not completely dry, and it will get all kinds of pinholes in it. Not a good thing. So I'm going to revert back to my good old standby of my flat brush. So my damp flat brush, I can come in and brush an area. So I can brush an area that I'm going to work, and then I can work into that. Now you can see some of the paint is spreading, and that's fine. I'm going to just keep working into this. I highly recommend identifying where the highlights are right off the bat, because on a black dog, if you lose those pencil lines, you are literally working in the dark here. You just cannot find what you need. By the way, when I wet that, I was kind of careful not to wet this little spot here because this has fur that, notice the technique I'm using here. I'm flicking with my brush and it's giving me that really nice fur-like edge. But you will really not like painting from terrible references. It's the worst. And if you ask people who do, and I know some of you will, you can make your comments in the comment section. But if you have ever had to do a pet portrait from a terrible photo, you can relate to what I'm saying. It's just the worst. And unfortunately, it's one of the reasons that so many artists really don't like taking commissions. Now, if you have control, if this is somebody in your area, maybe you could personally go and take the picture to your liking. I would advise that actually, so that you have total control. You notice I'm turning my brush quite often. I'm always looking at the fur direction. Yes, brazen. Let me find that question. I'm scrolling back. How do I get my proportions accurate? Are you using the grid method or freehanding the subject? Well, one of the advantages to printing out a big picture is that I can put graphite paper underneath and trace it. So that is what I have done here. But often I will hand draw my painting. Today I was scrambling around. I didn't have a lot of time this morning, so I did end up tracing today. But in my demo last week, when I was doing the white dog, I actually did show how to draw, and I didn't use a grid system or anything. Basically, you get your main shapes in there, your large blocky shapes in there, and you compare each of those shapes to make sure that they're in the right place with each other. And then I start breaking down those shapes in the same manner. I actually put the link to that video underneath this one, so you can take a look at that and my drawing process. Honestly, the grid system I don't really use in my watercolors because I don't want grids on my watercolor paper. An alternate would be to do it on a separate piece of paper. Yes, go ahead and use that grid system and then transfer your drawing, your original drawing, to your watercolor paper using graphite paper or something like that, so that you have a nice clean drawing to start with. This, by the way, is mostly Payne's Gray that I'm using. I am working on good quality paper. This is Arche 140 pound cold press paper, and which is what I use for almost everything I do, even large paintings. I will use that. I know many people will use sorry, I lost, 300 pound paper, so that they can avoid the stretching process. But I don't find that as economical. And for somebody who paints as often as I do, I just use 140 pound. So I'm coming up to the ear here, and I want to be careful of that edge. I want to keep that edge clear so that I can understand where I'm working when I get to that part. I don't want to lose my line drawing. Losing your line drawing is no fun. The one advantage to actually having it on a separate piece and then transferring it, like doing your drawing separately, is that if you do some registration marks on your, like on your tape, for example, your paper should come right to your tape, and then you can draw a line across it. Here's what I mean. So let's say this is in place, and let me grab a pen. All right, so I've got a pen here in my hand. Hopefully it works. So this would be taped in place. Let's move this over a little bit. And you would put a line. I'm trying not to lay it down because it's wet. And see, I can line up that line and put it in the exact same position. And of course, you'd need a few of those all the way around. But just put a mark somewhere on your tape where you can line up your image again. And then if you lose a line, because on a black dog, it can happen very, very easily. And if you happen to lose a line, then you can easily put it back in. Yeah, I do think that I'm not opposed to tracing. I mean, I trace a lot, so I'm not opposed to it. It's a tool, in my opinion, but it's no substitute for knowing how to draw. Knowing how to draw can save your bacon if you need to make any changes. Okay, so I'm doing all of this pretty lightly. I'm doing like a ghost version of this dog. And I'm doing it this way because then if I get it all in there and everything looks a little light, then I just have to build on what I already have. If I have to make a change, it's so much easier than if I've already put some really dark color down. So I really recommend doing a lighter version first. Figuring things out, basically. But I'm still trying to keep that softness. So working on damp paper can maintain the softness that you're looking for. So I'm using my flat brush to wet an area. I'm going to go in the direction of the strokes here. Okay, so right in front of the ear, there's a little bit darker spot. I may have to even go back and reestablish some of the highlight areas. I might have to darken those a little bit too. But if I have a light version, at least I know where that needs to be. Okay, now I got to sort out what's what here. This right here, it's dark area, right in that spot. Find that little triangle shape. A lot of people think, well, I'm trying to sort it out. I don't know, what is that I'm painting? You don't have to figure it all out. You just, as an artist, you look at a shape and a value and where it is, the size it is. That's what you're looking at. You're not looking at the whole dog all at once. You get overwhelmed if you try to take on too much. So take it a little bit at a time, sort out where your light areas are, where your dark areas are, and the rest will fall into place. Now, I know I'm going to get into a dry area here, so I'm just going to continue wetting this section. And this could be messy, actually. It very often is, this stage. And it doesn't look great. I don't want to get too close to the eye there because that eye has a light area around it. Don't want a hard line there, so let's soften that. So as I'm softening that, I take my damp brush and I'm hitting just the corner of the brush in that edge. There we go. And I can soften that in. And I'm not really brushing with this. It's very, very light touch. All right, so there's a highlight area in here. I'm just going to get around that one. And these highlights are going to look far too light. And that's typical. And it kind of looks like a jumbled mess, but I'm blocking in where the highlights and shadows are. That's what's going through my head at the moment. Now here I'm not going to go into my background here because this is a pretty crisp edge on this dog. We're into the face area where we really want more detail. I don't mind if these ones fade into the background a little bit. But this detail area up here in the face, I don't think I want to have that. And you may find this big brush a little bit awkward to use when you're spreading it out like this. I'm really only using the tips of these bristles as I work. Brazen says, decades ago, making reference marks on the edge is what I devised for a college art class final. Doing a gigantic portrait of my daughter from a 5x7, and funny how, but I had thought I was cheating. Not cheating. In fact, many years ago when I finished college, I worked in a graphics department, and registration marks you were very useful in what I was doing back then, because I actually did work at a drafting board. I didn't wasn't a computer back in those days, back in the early 80s. So you notice all my brush marks are always following the direction of the fur growth. Okay, now here we have that's a really hard spot to get into. So I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. So I'm going from this big brush to this small brush. Because it's small as it is, that's a highlight on the edge there. That's what separates that jowl from the mouth. And then we've got the jowl on the other side. So we have another hard line here. And hopefully you see the separation between the jowl, the mouth, and the other jowl. They're all compressed together like that because of the, the way the dog's head is turned. It's perspective. All right, let's carry on. I'm going to move on up to this snout area. Very light touch. And one thing to keep in mind is that as we get into this snout area, how short those hairs are. The shorter the hairs, the shorter the stroke. And in fact, in here, you can't really even see any strokes. It is so smooth in this particular section that you can't even tell anymore. You can't even tell that they're strokes. So it's just going to kind of smooth into that area. Getting a little bit messy under this eye here. All right, so let's come around the eye. Oh, I have to dampen that first. There's got to be a little white, lighter area there. It's not as light as that, but at least I'm reminding myself, oh, that's a lighter area. So come up into here. Oh, there's a brow bone there, like the brow. I'm doing hand gestures off screen here. You can't even see that, but there's, the brow comes like this and in towards the eye. So I need to curve those little brush marks. You think, oh, those won't show, but then they do. And you'll be wishing you'd gone in the right direction. I'm always looking for the brush direction as I'm doing this. And there's a fairly dominant triangular shape here. And we know that that's where the eye is, but if I say it's an eye, you're going to try and paint an eye there. But it's just a dominant triangular shape. And just a hint of the ear back there, not very much. All right, let's figure out this ear now. And this is the messy stage. Every painting, as you well know, goes through this sort of awkward teenage ugly stage. So we're going to just have to press through and know that this is going to come together. It better be. It's going to be embarrassing, isn't it? if I really mess this up. And I do sometimes, let's face it. There's a lot of dark through here. Would suggest, I think it's a really good practice for artists to not only learn how to draw, but take your own reference pictures. And here I'm drawing from one from Pixabay, but at the beginning I explained why I don't have a black dog. So I'm reliant on other artists, other photographers. But if I did have a black dog, I would have totally been doing my own reference. Maggie that I did last week is not my dog, but that photograph. All right, so this doesn't really look like the dog at this point, but I know where the highlights are, which is the main thing. All right. Yeah, one of the reasons that I'm really not opposed to the transfer method from a photograph. First of all, I usually try to work from my own photograph, which I have edited and cropped and created my own composition from my own photograph. The other thing is that because I teach so much, if I happen to not produce a very good line drawing, or if my students produce a drawing that's not in proportion or whatever, they're learning watercolor and they get twice as frustrated because not only is the painting skills not quite developed yet, but the drawing isn't helping that matter at all. It's, only compounding that issue. So for students, when I'm teaching, I could spend a course just showing how to draw, but that's another course, and most of the time I'm just teaching the painting part. So if I'm just teaching the painting part, we need to get to the painting part quicker. So transferring in that case just seems to make more sense. All right, so you can see that some of the things are getting a little messy, and that's fine. We're going to get a lot darker. We're going to add more to this. If I need to soften something, I don't like the way it looks, my good old flat brush, clean flat brush that is just a little damp, will take care of that. There we go. So I've got to start building up. So I'm going to just take it from here. So the transition from highlight to shadow is already starting to be there, and it's going to be quite soft looking. So let's see, I'll start maybe up on this forehead area. That's still a little damp. But it shouldn't stop abruptly. I'm going to put a little dampness around the eye here. Don't want it to stop too suddenly around the eye. But let's get this shadow in here. And it's interesting, if you do it in stages, the way that I'm doing it here, what you missed on the first step, usually pick up on the second one. I like to build in smaller steps rather than to just go in full force. I think that helps to maintain the softness of things. Here, I'm just going to grab a small brush here. So instead of taking my big wide brush, I'm just using my smaller brush with blotted, and I'm softening any of these hard edges here. That way I can kind of put them where I need them and then just soften part of it. You can start picking out all the little nuances. This little dip that comes up there in the eye. The fact that it might be a little bit darker right there. I think just the more of this type of thing that you do, the more you see values, the subtle transitions between certain values. I'm going to use my small brush here just to hit the edges of this. I'm going to work in this little section here, right in this little pocket. Smaller brush. And once again, I am, as I mentioned this when I was doing the white dog, the one thing I'm not doing is painting individual hairs. I'm painting values and shapes. That's about it. I don't mind this being a little bit dry here because there's some pockets of just little white hairs there. Little white spots that I'm going to leave on the paper. Little freckles. And I could do that later on with a bit of white paint or something like that. But I think I can do it without resorting to any white paint. Now the good news is if I have some clean paper towel, I can also lift a little bit here if I need to. Let's finish this little bit in here since this area is kind of dry and I want to get this part done before I get hard lines. So I'm coming in here with very short hairs. I need to stop when I get to the nose for sure. Okay, so let's say for example, I want this shape to be a little bigger. With a clean blotted brush, I can pull that out. This paint's still pretty fresh, which means that I have the option of lifting a little bit. So as I continue to work a little bit more on this face, I'm going to zoom in so that you can see it a little bit better. The key is keep the paper, Annette is asking, so the key is to keep the paper in working areas damp. Have I got that right? Yes, you do. This was about the only spot where I'm not really working on totally dry paper, or totally wet, damp paper, I should say. This is a little bit dry in here. So that means I can leave those little speckles. If I dampen the paper, those just fill in. So I wanted to leave those little specks of hair that you could see on the snout. I wanted to have those showing. But these other areas, if I keep it damp, I will have a soft looking fur. This brush, this is, I don't know, can you see there's a little dampness on my finger, but it's not soaking wet. And the paper isn't glossy. It's got a little shimmer, not much, but it's got a little shimmer to it. So that means that is at the damp stage. That little shape in there, it's a pretty important shape. That will determine the shape of the head. So that's a pretty key spot. Okay, a little darker right at the edge here. Okay, so we start to see the form developing as we put in these shadows, but we're also seeing the shine on that fur. Shine is another thing, right? The shine will always hit the areas that are protruding or where the sun can hit at it. So the those areas are really important for determining whether or not the shape of your dog's head actually turns out correct. And if the dog's head is not the correct shape, it's not going to look like that dog, no matter how well you do the eyes, no matter how well you do it won't matter. If the shape of the head isn't right, you're done. So I know you're eager to get to details, but it will be you'll regret it if you ignore this important step. So I'm dampening not with my flat brush, but with another brush right now. I don't know why, I just picked that one up. And I'm gonna have to soften that in. That's getting messy. That's going to be, luckily that's a dark area. I'm going to have to fix that one. Wait a minute, there's this shape that comes up here and there. Okay, right in here somewhere. Okay, let's see. This is got some dark here. Nope, that's dry paper. Don't want to work on dry paper right there. Now here's something that you're going to notice that's a little different than what I did with the white dog. The more paint that's on here, the more likely it is that when you brush across it, it's going to move color. We didn't have that with the white because we were mostly using just the white of the paper. So you will have to, at some point, just work on dry. You won't be able to keep brushing with your damp brush. I'm doing it in this stage so that I can establish the position of everything, where highlights need to be, where shadows need to be. Beyond that, I really need to watch that I'm just being careful and working on dry. And I'm almost at that stage, actually, where I'm going to have to just bite the bullet and start working on dry. So just trying to find some of the little nuanced areas. All right, so I think I'm going to jump right in here and start building up. The paper's not 100% dry, but it's pretty darn close. So, but you can see softness in those highlights, and that's what I want to try and get here. Fan that brush out a little bit so it looks horrible, but and if it's too big a brush, switch down to a smaller brush. My advice, don't go too many values. Don't jump too many values all at once. Build it up. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. I am finding that one a little bit big and awkward. This is by the way, a natural hairbrush will splay more easily than a synthetic brush. A synthetic brush, just by nature, has more spring to it, so it's going to end up springing back together when you try to splay it out. And yeah, brush direction matters. Now this edge of the ear, that highlight is just a little sliver. It's not, we don't see that much of it. So now I'm going to make that a little bit smaller now that I'm looking at my reference. And I think I talked about this in a previous video. I don't know if it was the last one or not. No, I'm not being like aggressive. I'm not smashing it or anything. I'm just spreading it out. This isn't an expensive brush, the one that I'm using. But one thing, here's something that I find very helpful. Let me just slide this over here for a minute. Just as I'm working on this ear, okay, I'm finding that if I keep, like I folded my reference and I've got the ear right beside the ear that I'm painting, and I can really see that. Now the one thing I am finding though is that, oh, my gray is a little too cool. Like it really should be a little bit warmer. So what can I do? How about if I add some burnt sienna to my Payne's gray? Except burnt sienna is maybe a little bit too brown. It's almost a bit, I'm going to put some permanent rose, no, alizarin crimson in it, sorry. So I picked up some alizarin crimson, a little permanent, or burnt sienna. I'm having trouble with my words today. permanent rose and, burnt sienna and alizarin crimson. I am putting into my color here to see if that's going to, yeah, that's warming it up more. All right, so I'm going to do a little tiny flick here. I don't want to grow the ear though. I see a lot of students do that. They're trying to do the flick, and before you know it, that's a long-haired dog. Because they've gone so far, they got so carried away with the flicking that they ended up making a huge ear. And then we have this dark section right there. What shape is that? This triangular shape here. And you see how that's definitely warmed up the colors in this brown. If you're not familiar with the term grisaille, grisaille is it's a very old technique, and it's basically underpainting with just the values in a solid color first, usually grays, and you establish it. And that's essentially what I've done today. Is I've done like an underpainting of a grisaille underpainting. Let me see if I can write down the spelling of that for you. The spelling of that word is I can't even remember how to spell it, but it's very close to that if I've got that wrong. Grisaille. You can, I'm sure Google will correct the spelling if I got that wrong, but it's basically underpainting with the values, and it is something that you can do very easily with a black dog. But this tip of having your reference very, very close to where you're working will be very valuable to you. That's one advantage also to having the reference you're working from the same size as your painting. They call that sight size. Grisaille, one S, yes, that's correct. Grisaille. Thank you, Jeremy. That's the correct spelling right there. And if I weren't doing this on commission, would you add some colors, blues, purples? Oh, absolutely. And whether I was doing it as a commission or not, I probably would. Now, how blue and how purple I add, so that this was the question here Carol was asking. As I said, you could go quite wild with your colors, but if you're doing it as a commission and you're typically known for your realistic colors, I wouldn't get too experimental on your customer unless they request it. Because if you have a certain style, realistic style, say, for example, that you work, you may you might shock your customer, and you might give them what they weren't expecting, and they won't be happy. I've talked about these kinds of brushes before in the past as well, but there are brushes that are designed that give you this sort of fur look, and they will, they're good. I would prefer what they call a filbert rake. Do I have one available? Yeah, I've got a little one here. So this is a small brush called a filbert rake. If I load it up with color, you'll see exactly what it does. So if it's dark, make the bristles dark, you can see. And it naturally has that same sort of splayed edge. I like this brush. I can load it up and do the exact same thing. I use those filbert rakes more when I'm using like an acrylic or something like that. If it blobs, you might have to blotch your brush to get some of that extra paint out of it. And my highlights might look too light. That's okay. That's easy to fix. If your highlights are too light, you can fix them really easy. If they're too dark, that's not so easy to fix. So I'd err on the side of too light with your highlights than too dark. At least at this stage. Because that is more reversible than the opposite. All right, so I don't want to get too picky looking here. This starts getting into the darker shadows, so I don't want to see all those little bits of the previous color under there. It's more where the transitions are that I really want to see sort of that splayed look. But I could definitely see some blues added in here, probably in my earlier stage. But let me try adding some blue into there just to sort of follow up on that. And I just went straight into some cobalt here. Then back to my darker color. And you can see it's got a little bit of a bluish sheen to the fur. Oh, Annette, you're a pastel artist. Pastel artist, it's tricky to get the head around watercolor. Totally different. White to dark, but your strokes and special techniques is familiar. Well, that's good to know. I've also done some pastel work, and I know that you can't put a lot of dark if you're going to put light on top. So in that sense, it is similar because at least soft pastels are very smudgy, and if you put lights down first, you can't get things dark, and if you put dark things down, you can't get them light again. Not easily, anyway. So that's good to know that there's some crossover. So even if you aren't really like when you learn one technique, one skill, it often translates to another medium. Okay, we're going to come really dark in along the side of the ear here. But I have to remember, I'm not painting the ear. I'm not painting just a line around the ear here. I have to think, okay, I'm doing the hair on this part of the head, and it's going in this direction, and I need to follow that. So I need to follow the ear, but then I also need to think about how it translates into this area here. And as this part of the head goes in or out, right, the shadow is going to go thick or thin. So here, that little shadow is a little thicker. Gets thin again till the bottom where it gets fatter again, because this little tip of the ear is probably folded out a little bit from the body, and therefore this shadow is much bigger. So try not to fall into autopilot where you're painting, oh, I got to put a shadow around the ear, and then you just do a line, because that always looks kind of weird. Am I using mostly Payne's gray at this stage? Yes, it's still mostly Payne's gray. I'm just shifting some of my darks with either a alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, or, you know, if it's a highlight area, maybe I'm just putting in some pure blue or something like that. But in my Payne's gray, yeah, I'm mixing other colors into it to warm up the color of the fur here. All right, so I've folded over my reference. Let's find a new area. So I'm going to fold this and bring it over to where I'm working so that I can see if I'm getting the head shape right. This is a great way to learn to visualize things as you're working. Teaches you to look for the little nuances, because when you have it right side by side, you tend to notice more. I think I need this a little bit more fluid since I'm working on dry paper. So when your paper's dry, your paint is wetter. When your paper's wet, your paint is drier. Now this is all pretty smooth through here, so I'm not going to worry about trying to get little strokes in here. But I'm still painting in the direction just in case. I think it's getting a little bit more blue up in there, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to get around this eye first. Look at that change in direction. I'm just going to draw this eye a little darker so that you can see it and so I can see it. Don't want to lose track of that. Okay, that's where my eye is. If I were doing a commission, I'd spend a lot of hours working on this guy. And I would really take my time with all of this. I won't be able to show you everything today. I mean, you're not going to see it completed because I don't have time to sit here for hours, nor do you. I'm sure you have things to do too. But I'm going to go a little bit more blue with my Payne's gray as I work up in here. There's a little temperature change as I'm coming into the light, coming into the sky, being reflected in this head area here. it's a subtle change, but it is there. I'm not even sure the camera can pick up that subtlety, but yeah, that's what I've got. I'll lift a little bit out of here just because I think, oh, that paper towel's way too wet. This might be getting a little too dark in here, so I'm just going to lift a little bit out of here. I'll soften that a little bit through there. There we go. So we have that nice form happening there, little change in color temperature. Still acknowledging the light areas, the darker areas, and of course that's creating the form of the dog, the form of the head shape. Soften an edge. Now we've got this sort of, I don't know what they call that little kind of line that goes down the middle of the dog's forehead. It's just the shape of the skull, I suppose, but it comes down in between like a little indent. And I don't mind exaggerating those highlights a little bit until I am feeling confident, and then I don't mind highlighting those. Putting a little blue in there, now a little warmer color. And I can use a damp brush to soften some of this. And then my highlights will tone down. They won't be so shockingly light. I'm going to get this area in around the eye. I'm going to feel a lot better once I get this area in around the eye done. Because there's so many different changes of direction here. I am painting root to tip with my strokes, and I do that because as you pull your brush, it tapers. The brush marks taper. This dog has a little bit of a teardrop from the eye. It's not a tear, but it's the dogs often get that. Kind of the run down from the eye. Now I'm going tip to root, but I'm just using small strokes, overlapping strokes here. This is going to get softened, I think. I think that highlight might be in the wrong place, so I'm just going to move this down a bit. My brush is a little damp and I'm kind of blending in those brush marks there. I need to really blend this one in. But this is feeling pretty good now. And maybe just a little bit more right here. It's very easy at this stage to start getting impatient. I'm just refolding my picture here. It's very easy to start getting impatient and doing your strokes bigger, faster. But stay focused. It's a great way to get your mind off of news and all kinds of things in your life that might be troubling you. That's why they say art is such good therapy. It keeps you from dwelling on things because you're so busy concentrating. It's good for your mental health. Margot says, if you were doing a commission, I think you'd be earning every penny while you painted several layers of fur in different directions and values. I think I'd have to really love the dog. Well, you know what? You'd really have to love the image if it's being provided by your customer. You'd really have to like the image. I truly would not even entertain the idea of painting something that didn't look like it was a good image to me. I've darkened a bit here, so I'm going to lighten some of it up again. You know, when I'm doing a commission, I have to be happy with the finished painting before I hand it over. If I'm not happy, nobody's happy. Because until I get it just the way I want it, it needs to be right, in my opinion. Okay, let's give this a go again. Because I darkened something I shouldn't have there. Now let's see if I can lift. Oh yes, I forgot about that one. The DaVinci Eye is an app that you can also use. DaVinci Eye, I believe it's free, and basically you can project your image you can project your image to your paper, like, and look through your phone or your camera to basically trace what you're seeing on your phone. And so you have to not move your head. It works quite well, but you have to keep your head steady too as you work. Do I have any advice on how to paint a husky? Yeah, I would kind of do it the same way as I'm doing right now. You just wouldn't be using Payne's gray. You'd be probably using other shades of grays, like maybe a neutral tint or something like that, which is a warmer gray. I know my daughter has a husky, and she's a lovely dog. I think I may have painted her before in one of these. I can't remember. I think I did. Oh, my brush is getting too dry here. It's the thing when you work on dry paper. When you're working on dry paper, your brush needs to be wetter. So you may find you have to blend a little bit with a damp brush if it's looking too harsh. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just sort of blending in with a damp brush. The whole thing boils down to values and really looking at the correct values. And now I'm working larger, and you wouldn't be putting this much time and trouble into a smaller drawing. You would definitely be simplifying it. I tend to get lost in detail. It's just who I am, I guess. But I quite enjoy spending lots of time working on something. I find it rewarding to see those details. But I'm still not painting hair by hair. Like you can't count hairs in here. I'm still focusing on the whole value thing and the soft edges and stuff like that. It's still very much in the forefront. I'm going to move over a little bit to this little section. I want to get at least around the eye area complete. Let's lay out that brush a little bit. All right, now we need to get a little bit more softness in here. So I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm not cleaning it out totally. It's still got a little color in there, but mostly it's just rinsed out and blotted. And then I can get that to blend pretty nicely. If you're blending as you go along, it's a lot easier than letting that paint fully set and then trying to come back in to do it after the fact. It's a lot harder after you've put it away for a week or a day or whatever the case may be. If you're doing it as you go right away, you'll just find it a lot easier. blotted my brush there. So you can still see that little highlight, but it's a lot more subtle. And at this stage I can lift out really quite easily if I feel I need to. It's a good place where I can make corrections here, or shifting things. Like this needs to come over a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm getting fussy, and I forget that I'm actually here live and working away and probably boring you to death, but I'm just going to do a little bit more here and we'll take a look. All right, so now there's no eye, so it's, you know, you're probably not feeling it just yet, but if I were to take and put in, say, a bit of warm red, like a brownish red for the eye here, even just putting some color in that spot is going to help. I used a little rose d'or, a little burnt sienna here. A little blue up in here. And I don't want to cover too much light there. This is the reflection in the eye. Right? Keep that light there. I come in with some darks at this point and I would be able to get that eye complete. But you can see how it's developed. This is kind of good because it shows you each of the stages. You've got, you know, the earlier washes are showing through. It's not white paper, so that's good. And they're softly blended into some of these here. And as we build up, we're going to try to maintain a lot of that softness as we go. So as we're putting in some of these darks, we are, you know, blotting our brush and just dampening the edges of those to maintain the softness. But now we have a really good roadmap for continuing on and completing this this dog. So let's zoom out and hopefully you can see the similarities between what I've painted and you know, what the reference shows. So you'll be able to know right away. If you leave your highlights too light, you may have to come in and brush over them to dull them down. Sometimes you need to add a little color. Sometimes just brushing over them moves the surrounding paint enough to tone things down. But yeah, you can definitely you can tone down a highlight. It's just bringing it back that's really hard. So that's one thing that I would really advise. And I'm just going to take a look here and see how many questions I've missed. I always feel really bad at the end if I've missed questions. Sue's asking, will I show you the completed steps next week? It'd be more of the same, to be honest. But I could, if you would like, I will show the eye and nose. I could finish showing that next week if you would like that. And if you would like that, please mention that in the comments so that I know that that's everybody everybody's on board with that plan, and I'm happy to do that. Let me scroll back a little bit more here. Make sure I haven't missed a whole bunch of questions way back or something like that. So I wish there was a way I could show the scrolling chat on the screen. I don't know how to do that. Maybe I'll have to try to figure that one out. Sorry, I'm going quiet as I'm reading this, but helps me as well. Cheating. It's not cheating to trace. Nowadays it's just a tool. It's a tool. I mean, Vermeer used the what was that camera called? Lucida camera or something like that. Yeah, the grid system's great. You know, if you're working in acrylic, the grid system works fine. But it's a little bit awkward if if you got these grid lines on your paper and then you try to do a big wash over those grids. Even if you've erased them, you've kind of indented the paper. So it's not great to use grids, at least in my experience. Renee asked if the splaying of the bristles was like that kind of thing with that's hard on the bristles. No, I haven't, not that I have found. I haven't found that any of my bristles have broken off or kept that shape that I didn't want or anything like that. So, Lynn says, when I do colored pencil, I use blues, purples, and pinks in black dogs. Not sure what in watercolor. Yeah, you can see, in order to get it really dark as I want it, I'm using basically Payne's gray, but I'm shifting that from warm to cool depending on whether I'm adding blue or I'm adding warm tones into that. But yeah, same thing goes. I think if you worked in one color only, you end up with a very flat looking, lifeless looking painting. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for adding color to your darks as well as your lights. Big advocate. Rake brushes are good by Rosemary and Company, but a bit uniformal. Yeah, and I know what you mean by the uniformal. They're all lined up equally. And so if you want all your hairs looking too perfect, you could use that brush. But in nature, they tend not to look that perfect. So that's why I like splaying the bristles instead of using a pre-made brush for that purpose. Let me see here. Yeah, and Carol, you mentioned earlier that I was painting from root to tip, but then I started working in this direction, and I was doing it the opposite way. And I guess essentially, for me, not unless I turn my whole work around as I'm doing all the hairs, it's easier to pull a stroke towards yourself or towards you than to go in the opposite directions. So sometimes it's just a matter of doing the convenient direction. I'm just trying to make an effort to make it tapered looking. Okay, so Da Vinci is useful in transferring your drawing. Okay, so let me see. Oh, Cindy says it's $39.99 per year if you want to use your own images. I'm guessing you're talking about Da Vinci Eye, or are you talking about augmented? It's augmented reality. I'm not. Cindy says it's augmented reality, and I'm not really sure what that means, other than maybe looking through the camera to your painting surface. Renata says, my nails look painting. My nails look nice. Thank you very much. I shall tell the lady who does them for me. Camera Lucida is another phone app. Good to know, Mark. Thank you. I'm not familiar with that one, but I can well imagine that it works much the same as the other. The Da Vinci Eye. And Camera Obscura, yeah. Camera Obscura, yeah, that could be the one that Vermeer used, that camera, for transferring. And am I at the bottom? I think I might be at the bottom. Okay, so I've got at least a couple of votes here now for continuing this next week, if you would like. We'll maybe forego the Valentine's themed demo, but I actually, if you are looking for a Valentine's themed demo, I do have a couple from my past years. So if you look in my previous live demos, you will find some of the Valentine's themes ones that I've done. I did some chocolates wrapped in that red foil. I've done the words love painted on a frosty window, and things like that. So I have, if you're looking for something for your honey for Valentine's Day, maybe those might fit the bill. And you can always look up any of my past demos if you go to my website. Right there, I have a page called Free Online Demos. Imagine that. And so I have all of those available. And yeah, so anyway, let's, it looks like I think I've answered the questions. I sure hope I did. And if I did not, I apologize. And I'm just going to come back here and hope you have a wonderful week. Good luck painting, and be looking for things like the shadows and highlights when you are photographing. There's a lot of really great photos out there that look great as photos, but wouldn't necessarily make a good painting subject because of the lack of shadows and the lack of highlights. So anyway, I have one more question here. Do I use my phone or tablet and look through the phone and you watch your hand drawing through the camera? Yes, Cindy, that's correct. I have to go back here to this page because that's where I have the comment section. Do I use my phone or tablet? Yes, that's exactly how you do it. So if you download any of those apps that we were talking about to your phone, you're looking through your phone and you can see through your phone, and you can actually see a transparent image on your phone, and you can see your hand through it. So kind of like what you're seeing right here, right? And it's similar to that anyway. That's the idea. So you have to mount your phone on something for those apps. Okay, that's it for me. Have a great day. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.